everyone. Hello and welcome in. Welcome back, as a matter of fact. I hope you don't mind the little 2-week hiatus that I took, not making any uploads. Just took some time to recharge myself during this quiet time of the NFL offseason. You were probably thinking, uh-oh, it's been almost 2 weeks. Where's the uploads? He's disappeared again. But no, there wasn't much for me to talk about, I don't think. There was nothing that I felt strongly enough to set up everything and make a video, hit record, and do all that stuff. So making videos takes time, and there was nothing where I was like, I got to get my 2 cents in on whatever the small piece of information that has been trickling down throughout the, this quiet time of the off season, if you will. So hope you don't mind lack of uploads last 2 weeks, but we're going to get back to it. We got the NFL Combine going on right now, and that's going to be today's topic of discussion. So thank you for joining me. I've got on the Minnesota Vikings draft hat from last year. We're in the middle of the Combine. I think as I'm recording this, the running backs are going to be working out today. And I want to talk about specifically the Minnesota Vikings draft strategy going in to this upcoming draft, because I think my opinion has changed, at least for the set of circumstances that we find ourselves facing for this particular year. Now, what do I mean by all of that? If you've known me for any length of time, or if you've been following this channel for any length of time as well, you would know that I am a strong advocate for not trading back in the NFL draft when you are in a prime position to select an elite blue chip talent that will definitely help and contribute to your team for their first year as a rookie. And I was morbidly upset last season. I wasn't making videos at the time because my son had just been born, but I was active on Twitter, and there's some old Twitter posts of me being really upset about the Minnesota Vikings trading down out of a position to draft Kyle Hamilton out of Notre Dame for the safety, and then they traded down with the Detroit Lions, 32 overall, dead last pick of the first round, to get a safety, Lewis Cine out of Georgia. And hindsight is 2020. We could talk about how that worked out, but that's not really the point. The point is that I think that if you are in a position where you're picking in the top half of the first round, or even in the top 20 of the first round, you're in a pretty good spot to get yourself some really good help, some really good talent in the top half of the first round of the draft. And I don't think that you should be trading down to get more swings of the bat at later rounds, if you will, because a lot of times you're trading down to acquire more picks so you can get more picks second, third, fourth round. And you do find, decent starters in the second, third, and fourth rounds. I will give you that. But the last few years, the Vikings have felt like they've really needed a jolt at any position, if you will. It's been a while since we've drafted Justin Jefferson in the first round of 2020. We also did hit on Christian Darrisaw, but it feels like that's been it, right? That's been it in the last couple of years, has been Justin Jefferson, Christian Darrisaw, and not too much of anything else. Because if you don't remember, day one of Kwesi Adofo-Mensah's tenure as the Minnesota Vikings general manager was to just basically eviscerate Rick Spielman's most recent draft class and just cut them all, almost all of them anyway. So I raise your hand if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan who last year you're like, I'm going to set aside some time to watch the first round of the draft. Vikings pick rather early. I believe we had the 14th pick last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. It might have been 12 or 14. I can't recall at this exact moment. But you sat down, you set aside some time. Maybe you attended a draft party and you were like, I'm just going to watch this until the Vikings pick, and then go on about my day. Maybe I'm going to turn in early for the night. Maybe I got to work tomorrow. I can't stay up and watch the whole first round. And then they trade back. And then you got to wait around to see if they even make a pick, because it's possible that they could trade out of the first round and not have a pick until day 2. So I'm being over dramatic, but that's how I felt last year. I have been an advocate against that. I think that if you're in a position to get an elite blue chip talent like a Kyle Hamilton at a position of need, go for it. What's the worst that could happen? It doesn't work, and then you got to go back to the drawing board next year. Same thing happens during any other draft pick in the draft. There's 250, 260 players drafted every year in the NFL draft. You're not getting 200 some Pro Bowlers in the first round. 32 players have to be picked. Okay, there's going to be failures, and without failure, you cannot appreciate victory. You're not going to get 32 Pro Bowlers in the first round. Sometimes I think these teams just overthink things. They get a little too cute, and then they ended up costing themselves. But that's just the reality that we live in. Having said all of that, here's the spoiler that you saw in the title and the thumbnail, is that I think that the unpopular approach, in my opinion, should be the approach that the Minnesota Vikings take this year. And it's for a number of reasons. Number one, as I said back in early February and January, I don't view that this draft class for 2023 to be as strong as some of the ones that we've been spoiled with in recent years. I think that if you don't have a top 10 selection this year, you are not going to get a day one blue chip ultra contributor during his rookie season in the NFL draft. Now, you might pick 16th and take somebody that has to play all year, but that's an unideal situation because you're just pigeonholed and being forced to do that. I don't think that we're going to see the likes of perennial Pro Bowlers being just taken off the board throughout the first round, as I felt has been the case the last couple of years where I've been doing mock drafts and I'm like, there's like 5 or 10 guys I can't squeeze into the first round and I feel so terrible about it. I don't feel that way with this draft class. I think that you either got, if you don't have a top 10 selection, you're not getting a blue chip talent. It really, like the talent gap widens and drops massively after the first 10 picks. My opinion, maybe not everybody shares that, but that's where I'm coming from. That is my point of departure for this. So given that, also given the fact that Anthony Richardson had himself a day, right? He had himself a day at the NFL Combine this year, breaking 2 records, I believe the broad jump and the vertical jump, and then just being fast as hell at the weight that he weighed in at. Is the Cam Newton comparisons are populating more and more as I speak at this very moment. And I was kind of on the fence a month ago comparing him to Cam Newton, but I think things come full circle and time is a flat construct. So here we are. So in my original thought process for the NFL draft, the video that I made a while ago, I thought we should trade up and maybe try to acquire Anthony Richardson. I thought maybe going into somewhere in the 15 to 18 range, maybe even all the way up to 13 or 14 would have sufficed. Those days are over. He is going in the top 5 now. I'm going to make that, I don't know if it's a bold prediction anymore, but Anthony Richardson's going in the top 5. I know FanDuel has already raised the odds on Anthony Richardson. He is now the second favorite quarterback to be selected number 1 overall, or excuse me, not number 1 overall, but the first quarterback taken in the draft, only behind Bryce Young. I believe Bryce Young's odds are at minus 240 and Anthony Richardson's are somewhere at plus 300. So Vegas is shifting based on what has happened this weekend. CJ Stroud is now the 3rd favorite to be the first quarterback selected. Something that I don't think any of us anticipated months ago, but it's happening. And it's going to happen because he's an athletic freak. So those days are over. I don't think we're going to be able to trade up to acquire the services of some of the premier corners in this draft. Devin Witherspoon, Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. I think we're going to have to settle for whatever comes to us. So, having said all of that, given my thoughts and opinions on the current state of this draft class that's coming out for 2023, I don't think trading back is such a bad idea. So, I think if you have draft night plans for the first round, maybe cancel them. Maybe think about the potential that the Vikings won't be picking in the first round this year. Just a thought. Just a thought. Now, obviously, players could fall for a myriad of reasons. Just biases by different teams, not fitting needs for other teams, whatever the case may be. There's a chance somebody could fall where you could trade up a couple of spots and get a steal, but I don't foresee that happening this year. There's been some players that have definitely, worked out during the combine this weekend who have played themselves into the first round, like Nolan Smith. I think maybe potentially Jalen Hyatt, the wide receiver, who had a great weekend. But I don't know. As of right now, it's still too early to tell. But I think that there is a strong possibility that the Vikings trade down. I would bet money on it. And there's a stronger possibility that they might trade out of the first round. Because let's be honest with ourselves. For this draft class, is there a big difference between pick 24 and, let's say, pick 33? Is there really? Is there a big difference? I think between pick 10 and pick 20, huge gap. Huge, massive gap, the size of the Mariana Trench. But between pick 24 and pick 33, pick 35, I don't think so. The Vikings need more draft capital. They have done next to nothing so far to acquire more draft capital. We still have free agency to go. They're obviously going to have to shed some of the veterans that have been on this team for a while. That has been a hot topic of discussion for the past 2 weeks. So there could be some draft capital returning in future transactions over the month of March. So we're going to know more about the Vikings draft strategy and their needs come, maybe week 3 or 4 of free agency next month. I know there's been some talk about Kevin O'Connell being very interested in the wide receiver group. I think this is probably the worst wide receiver group we've seen in the past 3 years because you just can't compete with some of these past wide receiver classes. It's not the same. So it's a very interesting time right now for the Minnesota Vikings. And it's a very interesting time for myself because I find myself in a situation where I'm looking at the reality of the Vikings face and going against my better judgment and thinking that, hey, maybe trading down is not a bad idea. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's have a discussion. Minnesota Vikings currently picked 23rd or 24th, depending on, what's, pre-draft thing you look at or subscribe to, because the Dolphins forfeited their pick this year and it's just messed everything up. Let me know what you think. Should the Vikings stand pat and see what falls to them? Is there somebody that you think that they can realistically trade up for and be aggressive, as I requested that they do in a previous draft video this offseason? Or do you think that the reality is slowly sinking in that maybe trading down is not the worst idea that they could potentially do? So let me know what you guys think. That's going to do it for me today. I will see you again this week. Thanks for watching.